Crap, you scared me. Do I get an Oscar for that? It's always a canon event that every time a Resident Evil game is released, social media websites are just littered with memes after meme. Now, I have been a longtime Resident Evil enjoyer ever since the janky pixel door opening animations, but I could never get myself to actually playing the game while being scared at the same time. I always had someone else play it on behalf of me while I just sit and watch and scream. With that said, I will be drawing some Resident Evil Requiem artwork from the couch while my gamer slave does his playthrough of the game, because ain't no way I'm playing that freaky ass game. So we'll go about this by drawing a couple of sketches, and then I'll do a painting, or two, depending on how much time I have. The tools I will be using are my handy iPad and the Procreate app. I should probably mention that a couch and a blanket are absolutely essential for my couch potato enjoyment. Oh, and there will be no late game spoilers in this video. Now that's all out of the way, let's do this. I didn't really film any of this in real time with a camera because my ancient iPhone battery literally dies in seconds, but I did manage to snap a couple of photos here just to prove that I did do it. But thanks to Procreate's time-lapse feature, we will go through that. Now when I do sketches, I will always start with a gray canvas because my eyes will be screaming at me if I just draw straight with a white background. And as a first sketch, we will start with one of the main playable characters, Grace. Now, I don't usually draw fan art because I'm always nervous about incorrectly portraying or mischaracterizing a beloved character, but Resident Evil has a specific aesthetic that doesn't usually work with my heavily anime-influenced drawing style, so I figured I'll try to use the current screenshot and promotional images as reference photos, and we will see if I can even draw in a video game realism style. So for this first part of the video, I'm trying to find my groove and drawing the characters by filling out this canvas with sketches. Hey! Okay, this next sketch was a little self-indulgent and I did not use a reference for this, but this poor girl has been through so much. And here I have reverted to my usual anime drawing style. Now it is time to draw zombies. Not gonna lie, Resident Evil games always had some sort of jump scare, but the ones in this game gave me some serious chills. Now I won't show the reference photos, but I will draw the zombie. Okay, let's get back to drawing Grace. This reference photo is directly from the promotional images. This might be easier than the first portrait of Grace that I drew earlier. Now I blurred the background a bit just to give the illusion that the buildings were covered in fog, but I also try to keep that rough pencil look. There seems to be room for one more sketch, so I'm going to draw yet another self-indulgent funny scene, but this time with my old man Leon. I've never drawn an old man in my usual art style, let alone in the Resident Evil style, and all things considered, not too shabby. He low-key looks like a twink here though. Pausing for a second to show this video of the cat chilling with me on the couch as I'm watching my husband play the game. She doesn't even seem fazed, even though the sound of the TV is incredibly loud. Side note, I did use a single brush for every one of these sketches. This was from a DeviantArt brush pack that I downloaded so many years ago, but I really like the rough pencil look on this brush. So I've decided that I like this so much that I am going to use it on the next canvas of sketches. So here we are once again, starting with our girl Grace here. I picked this image because the lighting was a bit stronger and I wanted to see how I can work with that. Okay, I did make her look a bit older here. Oops. Time to tackle Pookie! There are already tons of artist redraws of this particular headshot of Leon, so I'm just gonna take a page out of their book and follow in their footsteps. He's looking crunchy, but we all know he's just too handsome to be redrawn by a mere mortal like me. Smaller sketch over here. I low-key really like how Grace turned out in this sketch, so it's a shame that I just made it so tiny. Ah yes, another drawing of her beautiful friend here. I've also never drawn zombies in my life, so I enjoy drawing this more than I ever like to admit. And our final sketch on this canvas. In honor of International Women's Day, I decided to dedicate this one for the ladies. She turned out a lot better than what I was expecting. With that said, I think I've gotten enough practice down. From these drawings, I really feel fairly warmed up, so it is time to move on to the paintings. But honestly, I really don't know how to paint that well, so I'm going to take the sketch of Pookie over here and see if I can convert it to a painting. So the great news for me is that the line art is already done. Now I will use this paintbrush pen to put in the flat colors of the skin. Oh my god, what do I do next? Okay, let's just add the shadows and hope for the best. I just really hope this gets better as we continue. Okay, going to outline the eyes. Holy wing liner. Okay, I'm just rambling at this point, so I have added highlight and then cleaned up the nose, maybe added more shadows. And as you can see, I don't really have a rhyme or rhythm to how the heck I'm gonna paint portraits because I rarely paint them, ever. But if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that trying things outside of your comfort zone will help you improve faster, because on the verge of a painting falling apart, there are many new things you can learn in the process. So in this case, I'm learning so much on how to draw old men. It's always difficult for any two paintings to be the exact same since everyone has their own way of applying brushstrokes and textures. And voila! A certified old man. Now all the drawings I've done so far in this video have been heavily based off of reference photos, so let's get freaky and draw something not from reference. Honestly, when I said I was gonna do a painting not from reference, I actually had zero idea what the heck I wanted to draw. But I knew I wanted to challenge myself by drawing, a zombie. So I had to somehow incorporate a zombie and maybe add in Grace into the drawing. So my initial idea was to have the zombie peeping out from a door frame while Grace is just spooked out of her mind. But then I realized I didn't just want to copy and paste two characters onto a drawing, so I tried to make it more interactive. I may be drawing in line work in the initial sketch, but then I knew I wanted to eventually make this into a painting. And so I tried to make sure I got my shapes and my lines refined before moving on to the next step. And to be honest, I don't actually digitally paint very often, and so the first thing I did was block in a lot of colors. I know the stages are very ugly. I think this is also a good time for me to admit that I don't usually paint characters with blonde hair, so the yellow color is always very tricky to work with. I also didn't really know if I wanted to go for detail or to go for a more graphic blocky look. And so when I initially did draw in the hair, it was very messy. I was spending so much time on it, so I figured I'll just move on and then get back to fixing it eventually. I think the most satisfying part of working on this drawing was actually the challenge of, drawing in a zombie. There's a lot to work with in terms of facial wrinkles, facial structure, interesting lighting, but I was also learning a lot about painting on the fly. The wonderful thing about painting is that the beginning of the process can always be very messy and very ugly, but then when you just keep building up layers upon layers and slowly refining each element, it could eventually turn out into a painting. Now, I knew I wanted to challenge myself with lighting on this painting as well, so I wanted the light source to actually come from the match that Grace is holding, and everything else in the drawing will be occluded and shadowed, but then the match would slowly highlight some facial features of the zombies, like the eyeball, the nose, and the teeth. And yeah, after that, it was just going back and forth, fixing in details here and there. I eventually did go back to fixing Grace's hair. If I were to rewatch this time lapse in actual real time and not sped up, I think I spent an extra hour and a half just trying to figure out how the heck I'm going to paint her hair. I tried really hard not to look up a reference photos because I think the best way for me to personally learn is to just try it out and see what I think looks right, and then eventually look at a reference photo in the end. Now, I will say the hair did turn out a lot better in the second iteration of it compared to what it was originally like. And yeah, here at the end, I'm just adjusting lighting, fixing up some details, and voila! We have a very spooky drawing. Now, this entire painting took around 4 hours according to the Procreate time-lapse stats. Now, I don't know if it's just because I'm a noob, but I have no idea why I don't think the painting worked, but I think I'll just leave it as is, and maybe this is a painting I'll look back in the future and maybe I'll redraw this later down the line. I also don't usually paint a lot of horror subjects, so I did learn a lot from this illustration. Now, while I don't think I'm the best fan artist, nor do I think I am capable of selling prints of fandoms at a convention, I do think fan art is a good way to memorialize the video game or movie or TV show or manga that you were consuming at the time. I think it's a very good way for me to look back and remember, oh right, I was into Resident Evil 9 at some point. So I don't think I'll ever move on from the Resident Evil fandom as long as Leon Kennedy is alive. Anyways, thanks for letting me take you on this freaky journey, and I will see you in the next one. Keep drawing, and I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye!